Today we're covering a 1992 horror movie called Candyman. The movie starts with Helen smoking a cigarette. She is at a high school interviewing a girl about the Candyman. The girl tells her the story of Claire and Billy. She tells her that a while ago back in Indiana, a girl named Claire used to babysit for the Robinsons. She had a crush on their older son Billy. They were about to make love one day, when she told him the legend of the Candyman. She tells Billy that if he says the Candyman's name 5 times in a mirror and then looks back, the Candyman will be breathing down his neck. Billy looks in the mirror and says the Candyman's name. He stopped after 4 times and she sent him downstairs and told him she had a surprise. When she was alone, she looked into the mirror and said his name for the 5th time. When she turned the lights off, the Candyman appeared and killed her. The girl tells Helen that Billy saw the Candyman. He had ripped Claire apart with his hook and had killed her. This made his hair turn white from shock and he went insane soon after that. Helen finishes the interview. She has a smile on her face as she enters the hallway. Her friend Bernadette is interviewing another kid. When he leaves, Helen and Bernadette sit down and laugh at their stories. In the next scene, Helen enters a university class where the professor called Trevor is talking about urban legends. When the class is over, she goes up to Trevor. He introduces her to his student as his wife. After they leave, she asks him why he started teaching the urban legend lectures before the next semester. He explains that he has a curriculum to follow. She listens to him as he says goodbye and leaves. In the next scene, Helen is listening to the girls' interview again in a class. A janitor walks in and starts talking to her about the Candyman. She tells her that she knows someone who can tell her more. She calls another janitor over and she starts telling her about the woman named Ruthie Jean, who kept calling 911 because someone was trying to break through the walls in her house. No one believed her, but when 911 arrived, she was dead. She'd been killed with a hook. At her apartment at night, Helen tells Bernadette about Cabrini's green apartment complexes. She shows her some newspaper articles. She shows her around her own apartment and bathroom mirror to prove that they made this one with the same blueprint. They both agree that they don't believe in the legend and say his name in the mirror. Bernadette stops after 4 times, but Helen says it 5 times as they joke around. At night, she is in bed when she hears a voice. Trevor suddenly jumps in her bed and scares her. In the morning, they are driving to Cabrini Green to investigate Ruthie Jean's old apartment. Bernadette is concerned about the law and order situation there, but Helen is insistent on going to Cabrini Green. When they get there, a group of boys starts to harass them as they walk into a building. They think the girls are cops because of how they are dressed. The girls walk upstairs in a building and start taking photos of the graffiti on the walls. Bernadette asks her to hurry as a door in front of them opens. A dog and a woman appear. Helen apologizes to the woman and moves on. They find Ruthie's apartment and walk inside. They look around and find a secret room behind the bathroom window from where the Candyman supposedly broke in. Helen decides to go inside it. Bernadette warns her about any potential squatters or drug dealers hiding inside. She goes in anyway and starts taking photos while Bernadette waits outside. She finds a hole in the wall which leads to another room. The hole is painted to look like the Candyman's mouth that is wide open. Inside the room, Helen finds some weird things on the floor. She picks something up to examine and then leaves. She goes back to Bernadette to tell her she ran out of the film. As they are talking, the woman with the dog shows up and asks them to get out. They introduce themselves and then she invites them into her apartment. They walk inside to find her breastfeeding a baby boy. She introduces herself as Anne-Marie. She asks them if they're here to do some research. Bernadette helps her clean after her baby. Anne talks about Candyman and how she heard Ruthie Jean died as she called 911 on the night of her death. She says that they'll never catch him. At night, both the girls are having dinner at a restaurant with some other professors from the university. They ask the girls about their work. One of the professors subtly insults and mocks them, thinking that they are incompetent. He tells them the life story of the Candyman. The Candyman was the son of a slave. However, he got a good education and made a lot of money in the shoe business after the Civil War. He became a very sought-after artist. A landlord hired him to paint his daughter. He fell in love with the daughter and got her pregnant. When the landlord found out, he sent people after him. They caught him at Cabrini Green and sliced his hand off with a rusty saw. After that, they stole honey from a bunch of combs at a nearby bee farm and slathered it on the Candyman's naked body. As a result, he was stung to death by the bees. After that, they burned his body on a pyre. In the next scene, Helen is back in the secret room in Ruthie's apartment. She takes pictures of the Candyman's painting on the wall. After that, she heads to Anne-Marie's apartment, but a little boy named Jake, sitting outside, tells her that she isn't home. She asks him about Ruthie and the Candyman, but he refuses to tell her. He says that she is stupid for being alone there. She insists that he tells her what he knows and that she'll keep it a secret. He agrees and takes her to a little shed outside, saying that this is where the Candyman lives. He tells her the story of the little boy who was murdered with a hook and found dead inside, surrounded by his blood. The man who found him came out with his hair turned white with shock. She asks him to wait for her as she goes inside to take pictures. The bathroom was bloody and smelled awful. Jake is standing outside. Someone comes and stands behind Jake. Jake turns around to look at him and mistakes him for the Candyman. The man enters the bathroom while Helen is about to leave. He brings some people with him and they beat Helen up with a hook. They smash her camera as well. In the next scene, they are at the police station. Helen is sitting there with a beat-up eye. They are interrogating a bunch of suspects as the officer tells Helen about the gang violence in that area. He tells her that she is lucky to be alive as he lights up her cigarette. He reveals that the same gang had killed Ruthie and the little boy. Jake is also at the police station. He is angry at Helen for not keeping his secret. He fears that the Candyman will get him now. Back at home, Helen shows Trevor that her eye wound has gotten better as they sit down to dinner. The next day, Bernadette welcomes Helen back at the university. She tells him that her friend was able to recover photos from her smashed camera. She hands them to Helen and Helen is thrilled that her photos are safe. She is looking at them as she is walking to her car in the parking lot. When she reaches the car, she hears a voice. She turns around and finds herself face to face with the Candyman. She asks if she knows him. He replies that she doesn't. He says that she never believed in him, so now she must become one of his victims. Helen is listening in a trance as she falls asleep. When she wakes up, she is in Anne-Marie's bathroom. She is lying in a pool of blood and has a butcher knife in her hand. She is terrified and rushes out of the bathroom to find her dog's head chopped off on the floor outside of the bathroom. She walks into Anne-Marie's room. Anne is crying over an empty cot. She attacks Helen and she fights back with the knife. The police arrives and saves Anne. Helen is arrested. At the station, a female police officer makes Helen take her clothes off and examines her as Helen cries and asks to see Detective Frank. She is sent to an interrogation room and is now wearing prison clothes. Frank explains her crime and tells her that she is under arrest, explaining her rights. He asks if she needs an attorney. After that, one of the officers inquires about the whereabouts of baby Anthony. Helen is clueless after that. She is locked up in a prison cell. She starts to have visions of a baby being killed with a hook and Anne-Marie's is screaming. She tries to call Trevor that night but he doesn't pick up. Helen's lawyer bails her out the next day. Trevor also arrives. They cover her with a jacket to protect her from all the reporters standing outside as they bring her out of the station. At her apartment, they are glad that Helen's name isn't in the news. They ask her if she remembers anything but she doesn't. In the next scene, she is having a bath. Trevor walks in to kiss her before leaving to get something from the university. Helen asks where he was last night. He answers that he was asleep and reassures her that they'll get out of this phase soon. After that he walks out, leaving Helen frustrated. After taking the shower, she sits at the table to look at her photographs. She looks through them and finds something. She can see the Candyman standing behind her in one of the photos and she freaks out. She puts the photos away and walks to the bathroom mirror. She looks away for a moment when the Candyman's hand breaks through the mirror and catches her. He asks her to be his victim, telling her that this tale will be used to scare children in the future. He explains that their belief in him keeps him alive. Bernadette arrives at the door. The Candyman injures Helen with his hook as she hears Bernadette at the door. She shouts for her to run away but she walks inside and is killed by the Candyman. When Trevor walks in after a while, he sees Bernadette's dead body on the floor. Helen is laying on the floor with a knife in her hand. She wakes up handcuffed to a hospital bed. She is confused and hurt as she tries to hug Trevor. They transport Helen to a mental facility. On the way, she has a vision of the Candyman telling her that it is a blessing to live in people's minds and he whispers about in street corners. She also sees Anthony crying in her visions while a hook lingers above him. In the next scene, she is being taken into a room at the facility. She is taken on a stretcher and restrained on it. The Candyman hovers over her and she screams for help, saying that she can't defend herself like this. The doctor arrives and sedates her. Helen has a dream about Cabrini Green. The Candyman is in an apartment with Anthony. He puts his finger in the baby's mouth. In the next scene, Helen wakes up and asks to talk to her husband as she is taken away to see the doctor. He tells her that she's been in the facility for a month and has been on stabilizing medication. She tells him everything. She talks to a doctor about what happened to Bernadette, explaining the incident with the Candyman. The doctor thinks she might be mentally ill, so she goes to a mirror in his office and summons the Candyman to prove her point. The Candyman shows up and kills the doctor. All of the hospital staff is on their feet when the doctor doesn't respond to them. Nurses look into his office to find him dead. They try to find Helen but she successfully escapes the building. She goes to the university and finds Trevor cheating on her. The people still believe Helen is the murderer, so she goes back to Ruthie's apartment to prove the Candyman's existence. She reaches the apartment, turns on a flashlight, and heads inside. She opens the cabinet door to go to the secret back room. Someone has lit a lot of candles there. She finds a hole in the roof and climbs up. She finds herself in a burnt apartment. She notices the Candyman's portraits on the wall. As she is looking, she hears his breathing and finds him lying on the floor. She tries to hit him but he hits her back. He gets up and she asks him about the baby. He offers her to be his slave to get back the baby. He touched her face and she fainted. He picks her up and puts her on a slab as she wakes in a trance. He asks her to be his victim and explains how glorious and immortal that would make him. Then bees start to appear on her face and they begin to crawl out of his mouth. She passes out once again. The Candyman picks the baby up and leaves the apartment. After a while, Helen wakes up and picks up a hook from the ground as she moves forward with caution. She finds, "It was always you, Helen," written on the wall with candles underneath. She walks out to find the baby crying on a giant pile of junk that was supposed to be burnt for a bonfire. She starts to climb it and finds the baby at the top. Jake is watching her and tells everyone that he saw the Candyman. People come out with torches and light the pile on fire. Helen grabs the baby but is surrounded by fire. The Candyman arrives and tries to claim her. She attacks him with a hook and holds on tight to the baby as she squirms out of the pile. She is all burnt but the baby is safe. When she makes it out of there, the crowd is shocked and Anne-Marie is standing right in front of her and is relieved to see her baby. Helen doesn't make it alive. In the next scene, we see Helen's funeral and a priest is giving a sermon and paying her respect. All of the people who accused her of being the murderer attended her burial and laid the hook on her casket as an apology or in remembrance of the Candyman's death. Back at his apartment, Trevor is miserable and tries to resurrect Helen's ghost. Eventually, Helen's spirit kills Trevor. She also kills her lover, with whom he cheated on her. His new lover's body is found next to his, signaling the beginning of Helen's transformation into an urban legend, the new Candyman. Thanks for watching, guys.